welcome back to Bending the Narrative here on the Aspect Network. I'm one of your hosts, Kate Kronquist, and joining me every week to discuss the latest and greatest in the world of Avatar is Alex Batts. Alex, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Super excited to get into this episode. So
Mhm.
today we're taking a much needed pit stop with the episode The Warriors of Kyoshi. I'm so hyped. We get a bunch of Kyoshi tidbits and lore in
Yeah.
here. So can't wait.
If listeners,
Like
if you
last
didn't
week.
know, Alex loves Kyoshi.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That'll be every episode. I can throw that in there. It'll be in there. But like last week, we're tracking Team Avatar's own journey. This episode opens with the team talking about their off-screen pit stops.
So from, like hopping llamas to riding the hog monkeys, the team has had the fair share of off-screen fun, culminating riding the elephant koi at the start of this episode.
Yeah, which is it's I think it's cool that they give us a little and they do a little visual gag with this too that like
Mhm.
the gang has had a couple of adventures off screen between like us
Mhm.
being with them again, which is cool because the show does a great job, obviously, as we've talked about, of like their character bonding and stuff with all the time that we spent in them. But it is also
Mhm.
cool to imagine them getting up to some stuff like in between the episodes that they'd have like
I do,
adventures,
yeah.
around. So that's fun. And the map is also just like amazing. I love
And the map,
seeing
yeah.
like
So we start off with Zuko in his ship.
mhm,
And mind you, that I think there is a little Star Wars reference here because we start looking at the stars and they pan down to the ship.
mhm,
Um,
which
I
is
would like to
great.
think that's what that is, or it could have been accidental. But we
It's
see
amazing.
Zuko with the map, with where they've all been, and he's like, this avatar is clearly a master at evasive maneuvering. And then cut to the gang, and they're like,
Question.
"We're lost.
We
We
have
don't
no
know
idea
where
where
we're
we're
going."
going, which is
Best
so
joke,
great.
hands down.
Yeah. Aang is like, I just wanted to explore some. And he's like, we'll hit these islands that are over here. We'll get to where we need to go eventually, which is great.
So, as Alex said, this week we are here on Kyoshi Island with episode 4, directed by Giancarlo Volpe and written by Nick Malice. And if you're just joining us, we will be discussing the show in its totality, so be warned about spoilers. And, I want to start this week talking about how this episode is, I would say a feminist episode. This was, I think, 8-year-old me, this was my introduction to feminism. This is the first time I was like, you know what? Women can do it.
Mhm.
I can prove to the boys on the playground that I'm better than them.
Yeah. Love to see it. Honestly.
We
We
love
love
to
to
see
see it.
it. We love to see it. And so we start this episode off. We're on the koi fish. Aang's riding the koi fish. And then the gang gets caught by this group of green women.
One thing I want to
Wearing
mention before we
dresses.
get to the
Mm-hmm.
Warriors of Kyoshi, I love the moment because like Aang's like, you guys got to watch me ride the koi fish. Like this is the
Mm-hmm.
whole thing. And as soon as he notices that Katara is not watching, he's so sad. He's like, there's no point in this anymore.
He's
Like
so sad. And I do love
it's
that we
over.
do see that so early on. Like, even in the
Hmm.
first episode, Aang looks at Katara and she's like, "Why are you smiling at me?" Like, he's already
Yeah.
obsessed with her. In this episode, we really, really see that he really likes her. And all
Yeah.
he wants to do is impress her and show off to her, but she could care less. She's busy.
Yeah. Which is
She
so
has
great.
better things to do. And then so our gang ends up tied up on Kyoshi Island, and we are introduced then to all the women of the island and this. We never get the name of the guy, the chief, the
No,
leader of
which
the
is also
island.
super interesting that he is there in general.
Yeah,
Honestly, it's never really elaborated on, I don't think,
never really addressed. I
as
just
far as
realized that.
yeah. Which is also an interesting point that like the whole thing is that it's like the women-led island, but seemingly still the biggest elder there is a man, which is
As a
interesting.
man, very interesting. They tried
But
though.
but yeah, it's his name I believe Oyaji, I think.
Oyaji.
Probably
I don't think
mispronouncing that.
it's probably said like later in a book or they mention that that's his name, but I don't think they ever say it in the episode.
Mm. It's probably just in the credits.
It's probably just in the
Honestly.
credits. Yeah.
Um,
So they get
but
tied
yeah.
up. Sokka says his first like little sexist bit, and he's like, "Where are the men that ambushed us?" And they're like, "There was no men. It was us."
Hmm.
And he's like, "No way! A bunch of girls like ambushed us." And Katara's like, "Sorry for my idiot brother."
Hmm.
Which cute, fair. I would say the same thing.
Yeah.
And then Aang admits
And
that he's the Avatar. They don't believe him. He shows his airbending move. Cut to foaming mouth guy. Icon.
Yeah, iconic. We love to see him just absolutely losing it. I also would probably lose it like that if I saw some dude just like leap like 30 feet in the air.
30 feet in the air. I'd be like, oh my God. Start foaming at the mouth.
Yeah.
Didn't somebody say somebody said a conspiracy theory or that it was discussed that Suki dated that guy, the foaming mouth guy.
Wild. I don't think I've ever seen that. That's interesting.
I think I saw it in like an IMDb trivia. I'm
good for foaming.
Somebody fact check me on that, but I think that's hilarious and an odd tidbit.
Yeah. What interesting backstory.
Again, our favorite thing, we could talk about the transitions in this show. The way they transition back to Zuko finding out this information that Avatar is on Kyoshi Island is that this little girl who's on the island tells a fisherman, and the fisherman tells the guy who buys the fish, and then the guy who buys the fish tells the guy who he sells the fish to, and the guy he sells the fish to is cooking the fish for Zuko.
Yeah.
Which so sick.
It's so
genius.
Smart. And the little chain of events is so great.
Yeah. Like it really shows you that. And then so Zuko wants to come to Kyoshi Island. He tells Iroh to ready the rhinos, which we haven't seen any rhinos yet. So very interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting animal. And we're back to Kyoshi. And Aang has kind of made the village excited. They're fixing up the statue. They get a really fun dinner. They're being treated the royal life. And this is where we kind of start to see a big theme in this episode, which is Katara and Aang being kind of jealous of each other.
Yeah.
Like clashing heads a little bit. Katara's like, oh, yeah.
It's good. It's a good example of like, one of my main notes was that we get a lot of growth in their relationship in this episode through the conflict. Like, it's one of those things where they like start to realize how much, not that they didn't know that they cared about each other, but they start to realize like what their feelings exactly are whenever they start like bristling against each other because of these other external things that are happening, which is it's really smart.
And in episode 4, which
oh yeah,
in a lot of shows these days that won't happen till like season 2.
Right. Yeah. They're like, okay, like we're getting into it and really like establishing it. It's again just like the show knowing exactly who the characters are and where they need to be at each like when they need to be there as far as like their character journeys.
Yeah, like in this moment, Aang says, or Katara is like, oh, you like, I just don't want all of this to go to your head. And Aang says, I'm just a simple monk. And then he leans out the window to all the fangirls screaming for him and he blushes, which is so great. And then we cut to a montage, Hard Day's Night style, of him being chased by all of these fangirls in all these different ways. We get the man painting them, which we will talk about later in a later segment.
Again, and then, great visual gags.
Great visual gags, Aang impressing them with the push-ups. And I love the little air push-ups that he does. The ones, that's hilarious. I like that little tidbit. Great way to use it. And then Sokka then finds the Kyoshi warriors. And then this leans into my feminism aspect. You know, he goes, oh, sorry to interrupt your dance lesson, ladies. I just need somewhere to work out. Which they do it in such a realistic way. Like growing up, this is how boys that age talked about women.
So obnoxious. Like, he's so obnoxious.
And I love the way that they handle it, because they're like, oh, like you must be such a big, strong man if you're a warrior. Show us some moves. And they like put him on the spot.
Oh God, I don't know what I'm doing.
I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
They're so smart for that. They're not just like, and that's what I love about the show. They're not just like, oh no, like just because we're girls doesn't mean we can't fight. Like they don't say it, like they show it. They put him down. They're like, no, we're gonna show you. Like we're gonna put you on the spot. We're gonna embarrass you, and we're gonna
like hopefully teach you a lesson that you'll learn.
Hopefully teach you a lesson. Yeah. Now we cut back to Aang with the fangirls. They look to Kyoshi. Oh, and then this is when that little girl Coco calls him Angie,
which is so funny. And Katara's like, Angie.
Yeah, Katara's like, are you for real?
She's like, this.
She rolls her eyes because she's like, yes, I can't believe this. She's getting supplies for their journey ahead. That's what she's thinking about. And Aang is getting so in his head about this, but won't admit it.
Yeah, she's like looking ahead and he's like, no, we could chill here for a while. This is great. Which like, yeah, I'm sure that you do think this is great.
I'm sure you do love that. Wouldn't you love that? And then Aang says Katara is jealous, which causes her to storm away.
Mm-hmm.
And now back to Sokka with the Warriors. And he actually, happens pretty fast. Like talking about it now, like they cut back and forth to these scenes so fast.
Yeah.
Within Kyoshi Island, so much of this happens so fast. And after Sokka gets taken down, he then immediately goes back and apologizes. And I love that they show that. That is such a great way to show kids that even if you have the wrong idea, it doesn't mean like you're ruined and you're finished. Like you can still apologize and learn from this and grow and learn that you're wrong. And if people are wrong, you don't have to shun them or put them out. Like you can teach them, they can be taught and they can learn new ways. I love the way.
Important thing that like they don't, it's not that the Kyoshi Warriors and Suki like go out of their way to try to teach him. They put him in his place, but then they don't he's the one who has to come to them to like try to learn and grow. Like he has to be willing to take the first step there. And then they're like, okay, like if you're gonna be open to that, then we'll help you and teach you and like hopefully you can, continue to get the right lessons for this. But it's not like showing that it's putting that first step on in front of him. Like he has to try to take that to be better, which is really important.
And I know the creators of the show talked about how it was a big discussion showing this and having Sokka be so directly sexist. And like they even say that in the show that he is sexist. Katara says it straight out. And they talked about not wanting to handle it lightly and will children know? Will kids know? Like, will they really be watched? Because a lot of kids when it's on TV, they watch it out of order. They're not watching it all the way through chronologically. If they just see these tidbits, are they like, oh, haha, I see Sokka act that way, so I can act that way? Will they see the whole episode and see him learn that lesson?
Yeah.
And they said that they had a really good discussion with a lot of people. And they didn't take it lightly. They wanted to handle this really well.
Yeah, with like the importance that it deserves.
And I think they did that. I think they did do it very well. Because we said this before, we were talking, I think on a previous episode, you can't show what's good if you can't show what's bad.
Yeah, like you can't show that the bad thing is bad without showing the bad thing.
The bad thing.
Yeah, you can't just like you can't just have the back part of the lesson, the like good part. Like you have to have done the wrong thing in order to get to the right thing.
To learn the right thing.
Yeah.
And I think that's very important. I think a lot of people get mad about that, but like nowhere did they say this is good.
Yeah.
Like whatever. Like the live action show kind of does that, but
we'll get into it.
We'll get into that.
Yeah.
So Sokka apologizes for his mistakes and he asked to be trained. And then we cut to Katara practicing a little water bender and Aang and her get another little tizzy. They fight a little bit and argue. And now we're back to Sokka again. We keep cutting back and forth to this, which I love. It really keeps the show's pace like moving and this episode's pace. And I think I said before, like this really sets the tone for the rest of the episodes and how fast they move. But
it also does a good job of like getting the gang split up a little bit as far as like getting their growth. Obviously, Aang and Katara still spend most of the episode like in each other's like vicinity, and like interacting. But it's still like having them grow as individuals still like outside of just the like group setting is really cool.
It's this is like the first time we see them split up from each other, really.
Yeah.
Which is very cool. So then we cut back to Sokka practicing with the Warriors. And I love that as Suki is training him, she says, it's not about strength. It's about waiting for an opening. And then he immediately takes her down and he learns this lesson. And he does this little face I love where he goes, like it's a very girly face where he's like, what?
Yeah.
And he embraces the makeup. He embraces the dress. Even though Aang makes fun of him. Yes.
I love that here he does have to wear the full regalia, the full Kyoshi outfit and makeup and stuff. It's a very important thing because they're like, no, this is part of it. Like, if you want to do this, you have to do this. And he's like, okay, I think I'll do it. Like, that's cool. I like that they did that. It's a big part of the character growth.
That's cool. Like a guy wearing a dress in 2006?
Yeah. Yeah.
And a kid's show?
It's good.
You got to be smart to pull that off.
Shout out Avatar.
Shout out Avatar for that. That's pretty early on. All right. So now we're back with Aang. He's in the water waiting for the Unagi. And then he realizes the fangirls start to get bored of him. Fame is fleeting.
Yeah.
And so they leave him, but Katara shows up to make sure he was safe. And before he's able to come out of the water, Unagi shows up. And Unagi grabs him. He gets flung all over the place and gets flung back into the water. And he's unconscious. And we get not the first time, we get to see Katara save him once again with waterbending, with her new skills. She's getting stronger and stronger. She like pushes the water back.
Yeah, and she gets to pull the water like out of him.
Which is such a cool way to use waterbending to save his life.
Yeah.
That was
I loved the shot when the Unagi is like throwing him around, that we get a point of view shot from the Unagi's mouth and like looking at it, which is so just like, again creative and didn't need to do that, but it's a really cool shot and like super dynamic and creative. And the fact that they threw that in there for like, it's like 5 or 8 seconds or something, like it's not long, but
you're right, I didn't even think about that. You're right, like
it's that's so interesting, like it just makes it so visually interesting, and like you feel it puts you there like even more, which is so cool.
Yeah.
But so then the healing, which is nice.
Yeah. And then we pan over and we see Zuko has landed at Kyoshi Island. See the ship approach. He exits with the rhinos that we were talking about, and this is when Katara does the waterbending thing to Aang to get the water out of his lungs.
They're Komodo rhinos, I believe. So they're supposed to be like Komodo dragons mixed with rhinos, which is terrifying.
Sick. That's crazy.
Like that's insane. Komodo
Those things are so
enough.
Cool. Do we see them? Like, yeah, we see them again, right?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
The rough rhinos. Oh, we have the rough rhinos. Yeah. We see them again.
They're so sick.
So then we get the Kyoshi warriors are called to fight them, and the Kyoshi warriors, along with Sokka, start fighting the Fire Nation warriors, and we see how strong they are and how they're really able to take them all down, except Zuko. Zuko does start beating their ass.
Yeah, Zuko's, he knows what he's doing.
Yeah, and he does this really cool thing. He pulls this like kickboxing move, I guess, or like a breakdancing move where he spins on the floor. And I love, somebody mentioned that he does a lot of breakdancing style moves. And with firebending, which nobody else really does in the show. He's the only one who really does that. I wonder if it's to emphasize his teenagerness. Maybe. Or the fact that Dante Bosco is a breakdancer.
I did not know that.
It was like his start, I think, in Hook. He used to do a lot of dancing.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
That's cool.
So then we have Aang show up to save the day, and he hits Zuko with the big fan. He uses the fans. Aang picks up the fans and owns Kyoshi.
Yeah, I love the fact that we get another Avatar using Kyoshi's fans. That's so perfect. Love to see it.
Chef's kiss. Another chef's kiss.
Yeah.
We love to see it. And we see how powerful he is too. He flings him back into that house, and the house like blows up. Which great. What's that meme where it's like, we saved the city
and it's all on fire?
On fire and ruined.
The SpongeBob and Patrick, I believe.
It's SpongeBob and Patrick. They're like, we did it. We saved the city. It's in ruins.
Yeah. It's essentially what happens here.
But it isn't overlooked. Our character does realize that is an issue.
Yeah.
If he flies above, he sees it's in flames, and Aang realizes at the first time, like, this is all of his fault. He brought them here.
Yeah.
And then Suki and Sokka have their moment, which this is, again, one of my very favorite lines, because, well, a lot of media at this time, I think, was showing like strong women and women are badass, and, you know, they can only be strong or they can be princesses and there's no in between. She says, like, Sokka's like, I treated you like a girl when I should have treated you like a warrior. And she says, I am a warrior, but I'm a girl too. And I was like, like, you can be both? Who knew?
I love that even though in this episode, Sokka partly learns his lesson in the fact that like women can be warriors, but even still at the end, like, he's not fully getting it. Like, he's not computing that, like, he's like, oh, he still is trying to have that difference there where like, that's what she corrects him on there. But like, he hasn't, like, he still is like separating the two, like, and being like, oh, I shouldn't have treated you like a girl. I should have treated you like this. And it's like, well, no, like, could be both, you know, like,
Yeah, like
and that's still even after he's like learned a little bit of a lesson and like learning that girls can teach, like have things to teach him and like can hold their own and stuff. And so I think it's really important that he's not all the way there yet, even though he's on his way, like he's
he's on
starting
his
to do,
way. And
but
I
he
do love
still
that,
is.
like, that goes within the theme of this show. Isn't this show really talks about how things aren't black and white? There's
Hmm.
all of this in between, and like war isn't black and white, and not all of the bad guys are necessarily bad, and not all of the good guys are necessarily good.
Hmm.
And that's like just a small tidbit, I think, that shows that. And I love that whole little
Hmm.
theme. So then after that, Aang goes to leave Kyoshi on Appa, which will drag Zuko away. And
Hmm.
before he leaves, he jumps off of Appa, gets the unagi to spray water all over the village, saving it from the fires,
Yeah,
which I
which is
love.
great. Uses it like a fire extinguisher or like a
So
fire hose.
genius. It pays off. The unagi's just not something random. It's a big like Chekhov's gun moment. We see that happen within the show so much. It's never everything we
Just
see
for
is never
nothing.
not used.
Yeah, it's set up for a reason. I also love the fact that in the like opening bit, it's the like there's always a bigger fish thing, you know, when he's like riding the
Yes.
elephant koi and then like there's the huge unagi. You're like,
And
oh
like they
no.
keep doing that with the villains. Like we show Zuko, then we show Zhao, and then
Hmm.
I don't know who we have, but then we have like Fire Lord Ozai, and the villains just keep getting bigger and bigger
Hmm.
as we go on.
Yeah.
And they end again. We end with the Kalimba, and
Yes.
they
Which is
literally
great.
fly away into the sunset. And I
Love
do
it.
like they always end up leaving the episodes on a happy, upbeat note, which I
Yeah.
think they have to do.
It's good.
Because
I mean, it's like it do still be a kid's cartoon, so
it do still be a kid's cartoon.
but
Lest we forget.
it's good, and I think it works. And I think especially in this episode, like we see how important the side quests are. One, for all the character growth. Like we get
Hmm.
so much character growth for all of them here. Sokka, of course, and his sexism and like learning better. We get the Katara and Aang, like their relationship growing naturally out of that conflict. But then also we get another example, like we got this even in the premiere, and the fact that like Aang wanted to take the side quest to the Fire Nation ship, and like that had bad consequences. And like
Yeah.
here, he sees again that like him wanting to just do a fun little side quest to run like ride the elephant
Mhm.
koi had very, very real consequences for
And like,
all of
yeah,
these people.
ignoring his avatar responsibilities will only
Like
make things worse.
yeah, like, and he sees that, and you can see it in him that he really starts to feel that. Like when I mean, that's why he dives back into the water and uses the Inagi to
Hmm.
save the day, is because he's like, well, I have to try to do something. Because like
Hmm.
it's also really like heartbreaking whenever Qatar is like, the best thing for us to do is leave. Like the best thing
Yeah.
we can do is get out of here. Like, and he's like, but these people, I need to help. And so it's good that
Yeah.
he's like learning from that. And like it just makes for those side quests, they're not just random side quests. They're very integral to the
They're
growth.
important. They're not
And
filler episodes. Some people would call that a filler episode,
it's
which,
so not.
again, the
It's
door,
so not.
leave.
Yeah, it's great.
Get out of here.
I love in this episode how it's one of the it's like the first example, except for the Southern Water Tribe, but it's really the first rest of the world example of seeing how the
Yes.
world has been affected by the war. Because like at first, the reason they're tied up at first is because they're like, we don't accept visitors here because there's a war going on that we've tried our best to stay out of.
Stay out
Like,
of.
we do not get involved in this. Go away. Like
Yeah.
they don't want anything to do with it. And that's, you can totally understand how that would happen. Like
Hmm.
where they're like, well, we just have to look after ourselves and our own, and we can't really worry about anything else because we don't want to get invaded by the Fire Nation. Like we'd
Hmm.
rather just deal with our little island and like stay here. And that's really like, it's a really important thing to show in the world, and it helps expand the world and make it feel more real, and like gives all these characters, like you can then imagine how their normal day-to-day life is, and especially like how their lives have been leading up to this, and like
Hmm.
what they've gone to do like for that. And then the other big thing that I of course want to talk about is the whole fact that this is Kyoshi Island. Like,
Yes.
oh, it's
We
so
get a
good.
hint into this so
Yeah,
early.
which
Yeah.
is amazing. Like one, they have her design down because obviously all of the Kyoshi warriors are taking from her
Modeled after
design,
her. Yeah.
which is a fantastic design. It's so good. It's so iconic. Um, and we see the giant statue of her, which we don't really know yet that she's like 7 feet tall, actually. which is funny.
Oh yeah, I
Um,
forgot about that point. She
'Cause,
is.
yeah, because she's huge. That's like one of the main
Mhm.
things, is she's an absolute giant, which I love. Um,
Love giant women.
and we like don't get that we don't get that information yet in this episode,
Um,
but we do still, like, you get some answers, but mostly more questions about what did she do to inspire like a set of warrior women to like follow in her, to be named the Warriors of
yeah.
Kyoshi, and also she has an island named after her, and like how was she in life and things like that. And so it's again another example of like a ton of great world and like lore building that's also done through character stuff, because like you're able to ground it in Suki and in
Hmm.
her explaining like the reverence that they have for like Kiyoshi, and like she explains the details in the costume and like what they're for and like things like that. And so you really build up this identity, and this like idol isn't exactly the best word, but sort of like I
Yeah.
like how they idolize Kyoshi and things like that. And it makes it really interesting to where you're like, oh, I want to know more about her. And then it's also cool because you're like, that's one of Aang's past lives, like
Yeah.
that, like will inform him in the future. And so that's super interesting. Um, so yeah, like I love all of that, and the fact that we get that in episode 4 is wild. Like I
He's
almost like
crazy.
I
Yeah.
remember it now, but like one of the first times I went to rewatch the show, I was like, I can't believe that this episode happens this early on. Like
Yeah.
it feels like it would be a later down the line thing, but they immediately
They
establish
get into the meat so
Kyoshi.
quickly,
Yeah, which is, I mean, it's impressive
but
to
it
think about
never
the.
feels quick.
No, it
Yeah.
never. It's because it never feels rushed, because it all feel. It's again, I feel like because it's all just so rooted in the characters and their journey, that you're like, yeah, this feels like a natural like thing and a
Like
natural
this works. Yeah.
discovery, like as you go through it. It's also crazy to think about the fact that we now have like both Roku and Kyoshi established already,
Hmm.
and we're like 4 episodes in,
4 episodes in, we already have two
which is
past
crazy.
avatars.
Yeah, they
Insane.
really knew
And
what
I
they were
also love
doing.
like what?
They knew what they were doing.
They know they know what they were doing.
Yeah,
They planned this out. I think they planned this show out. Just gonna
maybe a
put
little
that out there.
bit.
Maybe a little bit. Who's to say?
Yeah.
But I do love like every episode does leave more questions than it does answers. And that really
Hmm.
does keep you wanting to come back for more and get more information and discover more about the world. And like you said, the lore. The lore is so creative and so good. And
Yeah.
it's like any other fantasy series, like with Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, or Star Wars. You just want to learn more about the world and what goes on in this universe
And really dive in.
and really dive in. And what's really sad about a lot of those series is it does get a bit convoluted.
Yeah, and this keeps it. They keep it real clean here,
They keep
which
it
is
real clean,
nice.
which is hard to do. How
Yeah, it's really
that's
easy to get
a feat.
unwieldy when you start doing world building stuff and like expand it. I think it helps that it's a very, like, I think the time setting helps them a lot with
Hmm.
that. Which, I mean, I guess that doesn't really, like, Lord of the Rings is medieval stuff too, anyways. So
Yeah.
like, and that is, I've tried to read the Silmarillion. Oh my god, it's
Like
insane.
that's you gotta spend time on that.
Yeah.
Like this
Um,
is digestible.
yeah, it's a kids
I
cartoon. It's
mean, it's for
very
kids. It's a
digestible,
kids
which is
cartoon.
amazing. So I think that basically wraps up the, overall
Hmm.
episode play-by-play stuff. When we come back, we're going to be talking more about the episode and how it compares to the live action version of the series. So we'll be right back. Welcome back to Bending the Narrative. Each week, we dive into Netflix's Avatar: The Last Airbender live action series and how it compares to the animated counterparts. For our full thoughts on the overall season, you can check out our first episode. But throughout book one, we'll be discussing in further detail how they stack up to the animation. So,
Hmm.
Kate, let's start with you. What do you think about this episode in comparison to how we got it in the live action version?
So the first thing that really stuck out to me, I thought it was interesting having Suki's mom being charged. And first of all, Suki having a mom in the
Mm-hmm.
episode that's never shown in the original, but having her be in charge of the village instead of the
Oyashi?
Oyaji,
Yeah.
Oyaji,
Mm-hmm.
who is also fiery fun fact,
Mm-hmm.
the voice actor for the Cabbage Man, and he's also in the live action version,
Which is cool. Good for him. Love that
which
for
is
him.
good for him. Get your bag,
Yeah.
get your bag, dude. But
Better
Suki
about
having
it.
a
They gave him
mom.
a poster.
That
Yeah,
is, that's where their
it happened.
priorities lie. It
It
happened.
happened.
They lose the fish, don't they? They lose anything about the koi. They just go to Kyoshi
It's not there.
Island
Yeah,
because, yeah,
they need to go to Kyoshi Island.
because they need to go to Kyoshi Island.
Yeah, I actually don't think they
Great.
really get
Did they
into
say
why
anything?
they go there. Actually, now that I'm thinking about it,
Yeah.
probably not. I understand them losing the fish plot
Mm-hmm.
because that'd probably be very expensive for the live
God,
action.
yeah.
So like, I get it. I like, sure, I guess, but also, okay. Here's
I
the
hate
thing
that
where
the show that makes me say that.
I'm gonna be a little bit. I understand that if you don't have the budget for that, at the same time, they had a bigger budget than Game of Thrones did, like the last season of Game of Thrones.
Yes.
You probably could have done it still. Like, you didn't necessarily need to, and I get that it's way, I'm gonna say, easier. It's more cost efficient to definitely do in animation as opposed to live action. So I get that, but you had a lot of money. So,
And like, let's be creative also.
yeah,
There are movies
I
with
don't.
zero budget that do beautiful special effects.
I really can't remember now if there's a reason that they say they go to the island. Like, I don't,
Yeah.
in the live action one. I genuinely can't
Because
remember
we gotta go. It's to
'cause we
move
have
the story forward, we need to go to Kyoshi Island.
they probably just end up there, which is
Let's do you
something.
ever do something in your life and you're like, this is for character development?
Oh,
That's what they did.
Yeah, I do think the Suki's mom change is interesting. I don't have a problem with that one. It's just it's interesting. I like her being the village leader, I guess, as opposed to
Yeah.
Oyaji. Like, that's cool. And that's more in line with it being like a women-led village. So like,
Yeah,
that's cool.
that does make more. It actually does. That's one of the things too, where I'm like, okay, that does make sense, and it actually makes a little bit more sense to have that because, like we said,
Yeah.
why is Oaji leading a women
Yeah,
village?
that's kind of
Women,
there's a little bit of
a man is leading the women-led village, huh?
interesting.
Cool.
Sure. So like, yeah, that's a
That
cool
checks.
change. You didn't necessarily need to make her Suki's mom, though.
Yeah.
I feel like not that like undercuts Suki's independence at all, because she's still super independent in the live action version, but
Mhm.
it's interesting. I do think
It adds to
though.
them all being like, didn't somebody pointed out that everybody in this is royalty, or they're kind of like rich kids,
Oh, they're all nepo
quotations.
babies.
They're all
Essentially,
nepo babies a little bit because they're
I mean,
like
Katara and Sokka do both be the children of the chief leader.
the children of the chief leader. Zuko as a
Azula,
prince.
Zuko, obviously, yeah.
Azula, Zuko, obviously. Toph. Toph
Aang is the
easily. Oh my God,
avatar.
I'm so
That's
Toph.
about as nepo as
Aang
you
is
can
the
get in this
avatar.
world.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, and so Suki now is the daughter of the leader of the island. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, let's go. That's
Let's go.
yeah. I guess so. Everyone that's not like a straight up rebel, like Jet, which we'll get
Yeah.
into later on, is I guess they kind of all are nepo babies.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Babies.
Yeah, that's something. I think the biggest thing that this episode like loses in the live action, the biggest thing it loses, we'll talk about the biggest thing that it gains, and I'm using that derogatory.
Derogatory.
The biggest thing that it loses is it drastically changes Suki and Sokka's relationship because his sexism is not there in the live action show.
Which again, like we said, you can't have the bad.
If you don't, you can't have the good.
You can't have the good without showing the bad. You can't show that the bad is bad without having the bad.
Kind of do it. Like, they do have him like try to act like they're not great like.
Yeah, like he tries to impress her and be like, I'm better than you, like as a guy thing.
Which is like they kind of, that's good that they're injecting that a little bit. I do really love, and I think I mentioned this whenever we gave our overall thoughts of the season, I love the moment between Suki and Sokka whenever she like, it's them not knowing how to flirt with each other, and she like goes to like do the battle with him and just like absolutely embarrasses the hell out of him, and he like walks away because his feelings are hurt. Like, I think that like that's a great moment, and I think that's a very real thing that like I can definitely see happening. So like that's cool.
Like I've definitely flirted with a guy and then I've said something where I way outsmarted him And a
You
lot
just
of
shut
guys
it
don't
down.
like that, and they leave, and I'm like, oh,
Whoops.
whoops.
Like, yeah. So like that's a very like that was a good moment, and I think that worked. But you then flip, and in the live action version, you have
Mhm.
Suki like thirsting over Sokka automatically. Like there's
Yeah, which I
the
mean,
shot of
the shirtless scene, I get it. I
I
get it,
mean, like, yeah,
girl.
we're not gonna say that she's wrong for lingering there for a
She's not
second.
wrong. You know, sleep.
Okay,
I saw that. I see
respect. We
you.
all like,
I
yeah,
see you.
okay, but like, but it drastically changes the dynamic between them because like that's not how it
Yeah,
was. Which is not to say that like you
it
can't do
needs
things
to be
different.
that way.
Yeah, but like it is a very like
Big
big
aspect of his
part.
character.
Yeah, it's a big part of both their characters. I did like take a mental note of this watching the animated episode because I also noticed in the live action episode, like when they kiss in the live action episode, like they kiss on the lips, and when they
Oh yeah,
in the animated series, like she goes to kiss him on the cheek whenever he like leaves, and like part of that might just be it's the Saturday morning kids cartoon on
kids
Nickelodeon,
cartoon.
so like
Oh, but in the
you
live
know
action, they're making out.
yeah
Oh,
like
in.
and so I think even
I was like, damn.
like like putting away that it might have been a decision just because it's a Saturday morning kids cartoon they couldn't do that. It feels more emotionally in line with where their characters are in that moment that like she's
Mm.
being reassuring to him and showing affection, but like not at that level yet. Like which very much makes sense for where they're at in the animated show as
And
opposed to
also,
like the
like
live action one. She's with him
him and
for like
Aang
a
have that in
day.
common. First girl they see out of their dome. You're like,
That's
yeah.
very true.
But
They just like go to it. Um which
also,
is fine.
yeah, with the feminist aspect, like taking that away from Sokka and back on that, like
Mhm.
I'm wondering, and I'm thinking like I theorize that they didn't do it almost because they might have been afraid to address that, and they're afraid that they wouldn't have the time to handle it correctly, or they were afraid to just even address that at all.
Which is wild that you
I
would
wonder.
think like that could be even a conversation where they're afraid to address that now versus 15
Mhm.
years ago,
Did you
right?
just
Or
check
like
your clock?
20 years. Yeah, I was doing
Pick
a
a
like
watch.
like yeah, let me check my watch for the calendar. Like
15 years
like
ago.
what that's like almost 20 years ago now. Like
Yeah.
the fact that they like that should not be a concern, really. And neither should the time thing because the live action show is a longer runtime than book one of the animated series.
Yes. And all that
That's a
happens
different
in under 30 seconds, but whatever.
that's a whole different thing. Um so the other thing though, the other major departure in this episode
Mhm.
that happens, and this is what they add to the live action show as opposed to in the animated one, we actually see Kyoshi in the live action series.
Mhm.
And I cannot believe that I'm about to be mad about the fact that we got to
That's
see Kiyoshi in the live action
yeah.
series. I remember before the show, like the season aired, and we got that clip of like the shot of her, you know, and like
Yes,
her
with the
Avatar eyes.
eyes and
Yeah, and I was like, oh my god, like it's Kiyoshi. Seeing her in live action was awesome, right? I love Kiyoshi so much, but it's done so poorly. It's so not
it
in
just doesn't.
service of anything like intelligently at all. It's super interesting that they decide to make her the first Avatar mentor that Aang gets to have a conversation with, as
Mhm.
opposed to Roku, who is
Yeah.
very pivotal in the season
Mhm.
and like the role that he plays, and especially the role and the relationship that him and Aang have as the series progresses. So choosing to start with Kiyoshi is just from that angle an interesting choice. It's not that it's
Mhm.
necessarily wrong, but it's very odd to start with her as opposed to the one who is way more integral to this story,
Yeah. And
especially
since
later
Roku
down
was
the
closer
line.
to him, that was his past life. That was
Yeah,
literally the
exactly.
closest life to him. Kyoshi's 2 lives away from him is before Roku, right?
Yeah, and so like you've got that, and then also Roku was very integral in the 100 Year War starting, and like his relationship with Sozin, and like all of that. Like it's a
Mhm.
very like
And the reason Aang's
Roku,
in this situation.
like Roku is very much a part of the story that is unfolding over the series of Avatar.
Mhm.
Yoshi's not really. Like she's further in the past. She's important, but she's not part of this story.
Yeah,
So choosing to start with her is a choice. Also, they really flatten her character and they do this with all of the avatars
all
whenever
of
they show
them.
up. And we talked about this but they really make it to where she is super one-dimensional, like merciless. You just gotta run through people, kill everyone. Like the Avatar's job is to be this merciless, like you just gotta get it done. Like some bad
Like
things need to
literally what
happen.
happened to I'm a warrior, but I'm also a girl. Like
Yeah,
what? Where did that
it's
just go?
there's
Bye.
just absolutely no nuance at all. She's
Nope.
just like, get up, you got to do what you got to do, man. Like go through it. And like, and that's not to say that Kyoshi absolutely was like, there's some bad things that need to happen sometimes, and like all bear the responsibility of doing it. But that's the big difference I feel like in her characterization in the books as opposed to this,
Mm-hmm.
is that she's like, I'll bear that. Like that's a burden that you
Yeah.
have to take, and like there's more nuance there. Whereas in this, it's like, oh, just go do it. Like go.
Yeah.
And then also she literally takes over his body and solves his problem for him. Like
Ah!
you take
So he
away,
doesn't learn.
yeah, he doesn't learn anything. Like
He doesn't learn the
he is,
lesson.
like we were just talking about, like the side quest has consequences, and sees the real consequences of
Mm-hmm.
that, and he comes up with a solution for it and solves the
And he has to
problem.
fix it himself. He has to
That doesn't
face
happen.
the consequences
Like
of his actions.
yeah, he
Doesn't
like
happen
does
at
it.
all.
But no, in this we just get to have Kiyoshi take over his body, and like granted, if I just turn off all my like logic and like storytelling brain stuff, like yeah, it's real cool to see Kiyoshi
Like if I'm
murdering a
just
bunch of
stupid, I'd be
people.
like, yeah, that's sick.
Like yeah, Kyoshi going and doing some cool action stuff in the Avatar state is rad to look at, and I like seeing Kyoshi, but like you lose literally everything else
Everything else.
because of it. Like Aang's agency is gone, Kyoshi's character is flattened. Like it's for what? Like we
Like,
did
was it
that
worth
so
it,
we
Netflix?
like
Did you do it?
we did it so we could get a 90-second clip and some TikTok edits of Kyoshi like wrecking guys, which like cool, but
What was the
that
theory you heard about the framing with TikTok?
oh yeah, the fact that pretty much the entire show is like framed center frame, so that it'd be super easy to make like TikTok edits for all this stuff, so you can like put it out there, and then
That's
like
so painful. That is the
and
most
like
like
whenever
that hurts physically to hear that.
whenever pretty much all of the characters are talking, like even if there's going to be like three people, so if there was like two people on each of my side, like it
Hmm.
would be framed where you can only see one of them, and then if it cuts to the other person talking, it'll be framed so you can only see one of them. That way like you don't have to worry about like missing someone saying a line, like because you're framed on the other person in your like vertical crop of the edit, essentially. I don't know if that made any sense for our audience, but like
Yeah.
it's just yeah,
Hey,
it's
we
like
trust
we
our audience here.
yeah, we just lost so much for what I feel like is not a worthwhile gain. Like
Yeah.
when you stop to actually like think about it and break down what they did and what they exchanged it for, it just is like
It's
it's not
cruel.
worth. I would have rather not seen Kyoshi in that way, and like
I would have rather
preserved
them
how her
taken the
character
time
is.
and maybe done a
Yeah,
separate show, a spin-off series about Kyoshi.
we're gonna get an animated
About
movie eventually, so like that's fine. I'll
I'd
take
rather be
that, and
animated,
that'll
honestly.
be
Yeah.
from Michael DiMartino and
Mm-hmm.
Frank Knitzko, so that'll be good,
We'll be doing the way they like.
thankfully. But like, yeah, I
This is the big thing
I
we
don't
wanted to discuss. Yeah.
I just don't understand. It's something.
It's definitely something. Anything else you want to say about the live action?
No, that was my rant. That was my Kyoshi rant.
I know, like, guys, Alex has been saving up that rant for a while.
I'm so mad. It's fine.
All right. Up next, Alex and I have a new segment called Extras Explored. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Bending the Narrative. Today we have a new segment called Extras Explored, the hidden gems of Avatar: The Last Airbender. Let's cue some music there. Yeah. This is the time where we highlight some of the excellent background characters and creatures throughout the story. Alex, let's start with you. What background characters are you drafting?
So the first guy that I want to talk about is the painter from this episode, who
Love
has
him.
one of the best gags in the show. I feel we'll probably say that like so many times before.
Yeah, there's so
we're
many.
done with
All the gags are
with the
so
book.
good.
Yeah,
They're all the best.
they're all great, but he's going to do a painting, a portrait of Aang, and he's like got his thing up, and he starts drawing him, and he puts it down, and more of Aang's fangirls like show up, and then he like because he's like, okay, I'll add like a couple bit more, and then he like puts it down and then puts it back up, and there's even more people there, and he
Yeah.
like has to add more, and it's just such a simple like, it's so it's so simple, but it's so good. Like
And
I
his
can't not.
face.
Yeah, I
He's
can't
like,
not laugh at that every time. And he just keeps getting more and more annoyed, and then he finally just gives up and walks away. And like,
so
how can you blame him? Like, come on, you can't expect this guy to paint that many people, especially when they're all changing and
good.
stuff.
They
So
all
that's
keep
like,
coming. Yeah.
yeah, he's like, I'm
And
not
then
painting
like
this entire
that is
island.
a bit they do often with the face. Like they do with Ground and a lot of other adults where they're like, they do
Just
that
the
serious
deadpan.
face that I'm
Yeah,
so done with you.
no, it's incredible. So that's my first pick for this character. Who are you talking about first?
The classic.
Oh, okay, number
Frothy
one
mouth
overall.
guy.
Yeah, he's too
Oh
good.
yeah. He's so good. And again, that theory that Suki dated him is so
Good for
funny.
him. That's a
Good for
pull,
him.
man.
That's a
Yeah.
poll.
He like, all right, respect. But
Frothy mouth guy polls is a sentence I never thought would come out of my mouth.
yeah, that I mean, if he did though, like major props. I just
Major
love that
props.
he like it's so extra for no reason. Like it comes so out of nowhere. Like
Like, who thought of that?
why does he need to be that like that extreme on it? And it just
It's
whoever had like raised their hand in that meeting or whoever, I wonder if that was
like,
something that they like the animator just did in the moment.
yeah. And I
Like it
wonder if
wasn't
too if it
even.
was another poll from like because I know a lot of this references Beatlemania and
Mhm.
that that kind of fangirling. And there's probably a video out there of a girl frothing at the mouth to see the
I'm
Beatles.
sure. And just
Or
like
somebody,
falling down immediately, just like,
yeah, or
oh,
like to
I'm
Michael
kidding.
Jackson, they freak out like that. And because people
I can
did, like
see it.
they passed out when they saw him and they
I,
frothed at the mouth.
I can see that. I almost passed out when I met Ben Affleck. I was like, can't do it.
I did when I saw One Direction when I was like
Oh,
14.
love
That
to
was
see it.
prime. That
That's
was
a
prime.
that's a formative memory right there.
It was intense. I screamed.
Love to see it. You turn into frothy mouth guy for a
I
second.
turned into frothy mouth guy right there. I understood him in that moment. I was like, that's my exact reaction. And I love when people use that as reaction gifs. They use
Hmm.
his
The hand.
face.
It
So
just fits. Everyone
it just
feels
fit.
that at some point.
Everyone feels
That's
that at some point.
that's why he's endured. I think.
Yeah. All right. Who's the next person you're
I'm gonna
adding?
group a couple of people, a couple, I don't know, there's like 10 of them or something, but it's Aang's fan club and them just like
Oh, well then.
absolutely losing their minds over him. So like similar to Frothy Mouth Guy, but I feel
Mm-hmm.
like they're coming at it from a different angle where
Mm-hmm.
like he's just like, oh my God, an airbender or the Avatar, right? And
His
they're
like
just like, oh
groupies.
yeah, these are just all of the groupies that are following him around everywhere and seemingly so impressed with him until they're not, which is so funny.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, they're just like I love them constantly like running around the bridge and things like that and always doing stuff for him. Angie, of course, which we mentioned earlier, is just an all-time like nickname for
Time
Aang.
classic.
Like, come on. Like that's amazing.
It's so good.
Um
And I do love like
who's
it's a
your
great way to show like how the world reacts to the avatar and how kind of like the outside world
yeah,
feels about the avatar.
that's a good point that like they which I mean also they're like younger. It'd be interesting to
Mhm.
see like how like all of the different demographics in the world like react to the news that like the Avatar's back. Like I'm sure
Yeah,
all the like older people are probably like, yeah, okay, sure. Like they're
sure.
probably like this is the sixth time this like decade that we've heard that the Avatar
That
is
we've
back
heard this.
apparently.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so they're like whatever. But I'm sure all the kids always like have hope because kids are generally pretty hopeful.
Yeah.
So yeah,
And like he's a celebrity. Like he would,
yeah.
rightfully so, he would be a celebrity.
Yeah, he'd be like the one of the few examples of celebrity in that world. It's kind of that's crazy to think about
Like, isn't he
a world with
basically their god almost?
kinda. He
Kinda.
definitely ventures in some, worship stuff from some people that like feel. I feel like there is something that like I can't remember what thing it would be that explores that more, but I feel like there is a part of the Avatar universe where they do explore some people who are like more cult-like as far as like how they view the Avatar and like
Mm.
worshiping them and stuff. I totally also just might be like making that up, but I feel like I have seen it in something.
No, that's in Korra,
Right.
where they're
That makes
like,
sense.
I think, yeah, they all hate the avatar. We'll get there.
Right,
Though.
it's like the
We'll get there.
opposite of like,
It's
like
the
a
opposite.
loving.
And
It's still
yeah,
cult.
it is a cult though. It's like the
Yeah.
electric shock guys.
Hmm.
Yeah, we'll get
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. Can't wait. So who's your
Okay.
next draft?
I'm not picking a person, but I'm. If this were a fight, I'm drafting the elephant koi fish.
That's a
I think
pretty,
it'd be so cool to ride an elephant koi fish.
yeah. I would
And
just lose it seeing a giant koi fish in general. Koi fish
yes,
are pretty cool, but
he's
like a koi fish that's bigger than me.
so cool. And koi fish are like puppies. Have you ever like seen koi fish in real life or interacted with them?
Mhm.
Like they will come up to you.
Yeah.
Fish don't do that. These
No,
fish
not
will come
generally.
up to you. I've pet koi fish. Like I've reached out my fingers and they come up to you and you like pet them. And I was like, that's a dog in the water. Koi fish are puppies. And a giant one,
That'd be so
like
fun.
that would be so cool. And they already do get really big. They already do pretty much get, I've seen some very giant ones, like giant goldfish too.
Mhm.
I know there are goldfish that can reach that size, which is
Yeah,
pretty intense. But a
that's
giant koi fish, I love a giant koi fish pond. That just like,
oh, that would be like a lake.
that would be a lake. That, you know, that would be a lake.
You got
Right?
just a bunch of like elephant koi fish going around.
Yeah. You're
Yeah.
like, this is nice. Like the size of Central Park.
Hmm.
Like, this is mine.
That'd be cool. I would love that.
Sick.
I'm gonna stick with your non-human for my next one,
Oh.
but I'm gonna do the Komodo rhinos because
Oh, yeah.
they would be so terrifying. And can you imagine just owning one of those? I would love to. Not that I would really ever optimally like to ride into battle. I think that I'll like not. That's
Yeah.
not really on my bucket list. But if I had to ride into battle, I think I would want to ride into battle on the back of a Komodo rhino. Like,
Yeah. They
I
look
feel
pretty
pretty-
uncomfortable though.
maybe if you get the like proper saddle, it'd
I don't
probably
know. What
fine.
does in one of the
They use
prequels
saddles.
of Star Wars,
The thing that Obi-Wan rides?
yeah, like that lizard thing. It looks like it's like you're doing a lot of
Yeah.
that.
Oh yeah, that's true. Because their gait is all like different.
Yeah.
Their legs are wider out than like what a horse would be. Which I do know how to ride a horse. So like maybe it, you know. I
Sprinkle in
could.
that little fact.
So like, you know, I don't yeah. It'd still be sick though. Like that's I mean, Komodos are dragons essentially, which granted there are
Yeah.
dragons in the Avatar universe. So like
Mhm.
that, which is also
We get to that.
yeah, we will we're a ways away, but
We're ways away, but one of the best
that's some
episodes
peak
of all
right
time.
there.
And that's a peak right there, but besides the point.
Komodo rhinos though, the fact that they were like, yeah, let's combine a Komodo dragon and a rhino is intense.
I feel like they were rolling dice in there.
Yeah,
And a
they're like,
partial dinosaur too.
yeah, Komodo dragons are straight up dinosaurs. Like they are that old, like which is insane.
I love it. We even got some dinosaurs in here.
Yeah,
Which is so good.
that's cool.
And, you know, I think the last person I would pick for my draft, Oyaji, the tribe leader.
Yeah, I can see that. Need that
be
elder
a-
wisdom.
An elder wisdom, and to be a man to infiltrate a woman-led village. A man leading a
And, like,
woman-led village.
and get away with it.
And
like,
get
no
away
one
with
questions
it. He knows something we don't.
Takes like 6 rewatches before I even question it.
Before I even questioned it, yeah, I was like,
It's 20 years later, and I'm like, wait a second. Why is this guy here?
Why is he here?
Master of stealth.
He doesn't really do anything, does he? Like, the plot wouldn't change if he was taken out.
No, he probably, I think all he does is deliver a couple of the lines about like them being separate from, well, I mean, clearly the plot doesn't change. He's not in the live action show.
Yeah.
But
That's the one
yeah,
thing where it's like, okay, they could leave him out.
Yeah,
Like,
that was a good one.
But I think that's our
What are his-
last one. Anything else you want to say on that?
I don't think so. I think that's pretty solid though. Some of our extras explored.
Yeah, I'm
This
excited to get
episode
into
had-
more episodes with more extras. There's a lot of really good ones.
Yeah, it's impressive that they already have established so early on such a well-rounded like background characters.
Mm-hmm.
Like these are like literally all the people that we just mentioned, except for like the animals, don't show up again.
Yeah.
Like and they're memorable enough to warrant a segment, which is really
Yeah.
cool. But I
Like
think
that just
about,
shows the detail.
yeah, the level of care and detail that they put into all of it is just top notch. Love
It's just chef's kiss again.
we should keep a counter for like how many. That'd be a cool thing to do.
How many chef's kisses? It gets a
Yeah.
million chef's kisses. This
Just
show gets a
immediately
chef makeout. It gets
just
it gets
immediately
a
breaks the
chef
counter.
French kiss.
Deserved, honestly.
It deserved for this show.
I think that just about wraps it up though for
Yeah.
this week's episode. Thank
So
you,
thank you
everyone.
guys.
Yeah, thank you for tuning in to Bending the Narrative. Next week, we're diving deep into the live action and animation comparisons with The King of Omashu. That's going to be super interesting.
Super fun.
Before that, though, Kate, where can people find you online?
You can find me on Instagram at Kate the Official.
Awesome. And you can find me online at AP Batman with 2 T's. Please be sure to subscribe here to The Aspect on YouTube and any platform that podcast can be found. Please be sure to give us a like, leave a comment, hit that subscribe button, turn the notification bell on so you never miss an episode. You can also follow us on Twitter/X, at Instagram, and on TikTok at The Aspect Co. Thank you again so much for listening.
And Flamio Hot Man.